Alright, so we're back here and we're starting to get into InDesign at this time. You should have InDesign. This is a more doing with me step-by-step process. We are still going to go over the tool and workspace, but I'm going to try to be pretty quick. Please always explore and try new things, but I'm just going to show you just the essentials for this project and point out some differences. So let's create a new. We're going to create the postcard so we can get right into postcards once we're ready to start making the three different variations. So inch, we're going to make this 7. This is all on the site, the size and scale. And make sure we name this correctly. InDesign lesson 1 underscore your last name. So it's going to be the same as how I have it titled here. InDesign lesson 1 summertime underscore your name will also be here. Alright, so we got the naming. We have 3 pages. We know we're doing 3. We're not going to do facing pages. We'll talk about facing pages some other time. I guess facing pages, if you want to visualize it, it's going to be like looking at a book page. You have one side, the right and the left side, as one big spread. It'll make more sense when you see it visually. These are just single cards, so I just don't want them to be facing. I want them in a row. So 3. And then columns, I'm going to add 3. Margins, I'm just going to change these to 25. So 0.25. Whoops, that's not correct. 0.25. And you should have the links connected, and if they are, if I click on the next one, it'll just automatically load that up. And I want to do exactly the same thing I did with margins with bleeds. So 0.25. Alright, we don't have to worry about slugs. Preview is looking good. I've got 3 columns. I've got the frame of the original size, which is 7.5. That's that darker line here. Margin is this second pinkish line, which is a quarter in. And then the red is a quarter out, which is the bleed. So from this dark black line to the red line, that's that extra bonus color. So when these get cut down, you don't ever get a chance to see any white. We want to make sure that this is printed, it'll be full color. The bleed allows for any possible accident in cutting, that there will always be color. Alright, so this is looking kind of similar, right? So we have our tools on one side, our workspace on the other, and this right here between this top bar is the control, and you can find that under window where it's clicked control. So that's essential. Please make sure you have that clicked. And then you know that this is delete, minimize, and expand. Important things to know. And you can immediately see how these tools of the control work. So as soon as I move my arrow, it shows me what location I am on the page. This will relate to when I make a shape, also directing, changing direction, scaling, shifting. It can be all done here, rotating, flipping. It's really nice to have this option, percentage and scale, all available at your fingertips on the top. This is your fill. So I have my drop box for my fill and my stroke line. And this will be some other type wraparound information. And that's about what I have. But it does change depending on what tool you are selecting. So this one you're really familiar with. It's the open hand. It's the selection tool. Direct selection tool. You can move parts. This is the page tool. It allows you to change the page. So a good way of showing this is if you go to pages. See how they're all in your row? There's my 3 pages available. I can actually select a page, See how it's selected here? And I can change the orientation if I wanted to. So this allows me to choose one of them and change the direction. I can even change the scale if I wanted to. So this is very different from Illustrator and Photoshop. You can't tell, but it's just a little bit larger, that size. Let's do 20. So see how I can actually change the layout? That's under Page Tool. I can affect just one. I'm going to undo that and go back to our original. I want to make sure that our size and scale is the same. The gapping tool is something I'll have to talk to you when I show you some other tools. Contact collection tools is also something I'll have to talk about later if we can get time to get to it. So we have the type tool that you should be familiar with. It's the same format. You pull in and you can create a type box and then start typing. It's more like Illustrator. Photoshop just made a box already every time you ended up typing. You still have this, you have to drag and create a box and then you can type. It does have two options. If you hit the little arrow on the side, you have typing on path. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. Let's put it back to the basic. Look at how there are letters and numbers next to these tools. These are quick key commands. So if you're going to use type tool a lot, you might want to remember that the type tool is T, the direct tool is A, and the selection tool is V. Those are pretty much the same throughout all the software. This is the pen tool. It's still here. So if you liked it, you can still use it. And if you select the arrow just right, you can see that they're all available. Paintbrush doesn't, I believe, have a... So there's different types of paintbrush. I mean, not paintbrush, pencil. And then there's a smoothing tool within the pencil. And then there's a erase tool. I usually, when I have to start drawing, I go back to Illustrator to work on. But we have some of these quick tools available. So there's two different shape tools. So this has a circle, a polygon, and a rectangle. This one also has a circle, polygon, and a rectangle. The difference between one is there's an X in it. Let's pick not the polygon because it's not as clear as, let's say, a rectangle. So this has an X in it, where this shape, as you can even see just by the tools icon, it doesn't. Both of them can load type, so you can change it into a type by just clicking on it, and you can start typing. It will change into a type. Both of them can be changed into different colors. And I can add an outline to it. So you say, then why have two? See that X mark? That X mark indicates that if I was to lay this all out without having not having image yet, that could indicate to someone else who's working on this file with me that a real image is coming. So if I was going to lay this out and I had an image here and an image located here, let's just say that, and let's say even have type, and in type there's still placeholder text. So let's say that I had not the type or the image yet, right? So this needs to go out every week, and they don't have the photographer or the writer isn't done. You've got to believe that that's what happens in newspapers all the time. Their deadlines are tight and constant. So they could do this, have their headers set up, have everything set up and ready to go. So once the copy and the information comes in, they can place where it needs to go and get it out the door. So the only reason why this has X is to indicate that that is a placeholder for image. Scissors, you've probably seen before. It cuts through shapes. Transform is great. It works a lot like the Photoshop transform. So you type out the image, and you can, if you're using the transform, you can actually move the image and the size larger or smaller. Where if you just had it on the type tool and not clicked on the tool, it would only affect the box. So I'd be able to turn the box and rotate the box, but the scale and the size would not be affected until I selected the tool. And then hitting Shift, I could even keep it to scale. So anything I want to change in size and scale without distorting, I need to make sure I have the toolbox, the transform tool, which is instead of T in Photoshop is E. So try to keep that, remember that. It's really important because also, not only can you not resize type, but you can't resize images. So I'm just going to place an image really quickly. We'll go over placement in the next project. So this is my online class. You think you had to make a lot of folders. I have tons of folders, and if I don't have enough folders, then I don't know where things are. Alright, so I can move this out, and you'll see the image in here. But the image isn't actually, it's just being masked. It's just inside. So see this circle here? I can move the image with the hand if I have the image. You can't see the image because the image is so large. So you can see a glimpse of it now. That's what I mean it's being masked. It's much larger than the square that we have. So if I have it clicked, I can shift, and always shift to keep the image scale correct. This is something you should know in Photoshop too. And for some reason it changes. These aren't to scale. You need to make sure that they're both 14:14. Right? You want to keep the percentage of the image exactly the same. Alright, so I've moved the image from the inside. It's still being masked. And all I want to do at this point is, this is the way I want it to look. I want it masked off that much. But now I just want to make it larger. And I can't unless I select the transform tool. Then hitting Shift, I can transform the image in its masked box any way I want. So you have to remember that if it's not on this tool, you cannot manipulate the masked image. You must be on the transform free tool to manipulate the image. If you're just moving the masked square, then you don't need to be on the transform. So that is one of the biggest things we're going to be working on in the next few pieces of placing and understanding how to move them within this masked image. Then we have the eyedroppers. We'll talk more about that. The hand, which allows you to move the image around, and then the magnifying glass, the good old magnifying glass. The hand to shift it over, and then option to go further back, and click on it to go forward. Alright, so those are pretty much the tools. You should know the fills and that the arrow can go flip it from back to forth. This will do type, so if we had type and we wanted to fill, we can do outline and fill. So over here, let's start chipping away at this side. We have first off the character, which you should be familiar with. This is how you adjust the type. For the projects we'll be working on, we'll be using summertime for sure. And I'm going to change it to Clarendon, Super Clarendon. So I want to get down pretty far, not that far. There it is. I'm going to be using Super Clarendon. Did you notice that the control panel changed? Now we have tools for the type tool. We have the name of the font. We have the different size character styles. We have the sizing, so I can make it really big or really small. And we have the leading that I can make really close or let it be on auto. I can also uppercase or lowercase. So play around with these options. I don't typically use these options, but sometimes I use uppercase, lowercase. Sometimes it's a quick fix. But it's only for just getting an idea of what I want. Then you have justifications, centered, align right, left, justifying. So there's all these other options here. So that's under the type. There's swatches, which you should be familiar with Illustrator and Photoshop. Paragraphs we'll get into more, but here's more information that's also located here. Layers, you are very familiar with Illustrator. You can use it, but because of pages, you know, I do use it sometimes, and if I do, I put one as type. So all my type is on one layer. And then I would add another one for image. So that if I was working just solely on image, I can lock one layer or the other. Links, I need to discuss the links a little bit more when we bring the images in. It will link the images to a folder that you have it in. And it's very important to know where that folder is. Strokes you should be familiar with. We would also have strokes up here. If this somehow changed, there's our strokes. Color would just allow you to have more choices and manually changing the color or adding different percentages of color. Character styles, paragraph styles we'll go over. Effects, you've seen these in Photoshop. Transparency. All of these should be familiar with you. It's a little bit different. Aligning is something that I use a lot. It aligns, so if you have multiple boxes and they're just kind of all over the place and you want them all to be aligned up on the top, you can select it and align it, and it will lock directly to the height of the one to line them all up on one. Now if one was like this, and this, and you just don't know which one you want, but you wanted to select one, you can line them up to the one. See how I highlighted that one? That one became the lead on the height. So again, to make one the important one, I can select all of them, and then I select one. I just select that one, not that it's in the center, and then I use a line on the top. So it's going to use this top as the top to define the height. So that's a nice trick. Story we'll get to later when we do more type, and Pathfinder is one of my favorites. It allows you to combine boxes or break them apart. So this took the little bit that were connected. So Pathfinder has a whole bunch of different fun things that it can do. It's a very handy tool. Alright, so that's really all of the workspace and tools. There's a lot of similar tools, which is lucky for us. The only one I would say is different is the page tool. Oh, there's one more. I guess we should talk about gaps. The nice thing about InDesign is that if I was making a grid system of a whole bunch of squares, I can make boxes very quickly just using the arrow. And like I said, I'll get into more detail. But the gap allows me to shift these sections to be even more custom. So hence, this is why it's for layout. If I needed my header here and my main copy here, that tool made it very easy for me to redefine the shape very quickly of my layout. Fun tools. Let's get into the meat of this in the next lesson. So this was just covering the tools in Workspace. Take a break, get up and walk around. Thanks for listening in. Hold on to this file because this file will be what we use for the next thing.